Thank you for joining me today on Weir Radio. I'm James, and today I'm in Evenwood, taking a look into the funeral industry and hopefully getting a bit of an insight to how it all works. So a big welcome to my special guest today from GT Worthy Funeral Service. I've got Graham Worthy. How are you, Graham?
I'm very well, thanks, James. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much, Graham. Thanks for taking time to see us today. So, Graham, being in the funeral industry is probably something that a lot of people would see as a bit of a unique job. How did you get into it?
Got into it at quite a young age. Like a lot of people within the industry, it became a family trait. My ancestors ran funeral directors in Sunderland back in the early 20th century, and my father worked within the Sunderland Cemeteries department as a gravedigger. So when leaving school, I ended up becoming involved through my dad, really, who got me a job as opposed to sitting on my backside, you know.
Yeah.
From there, I worked in a stonemasons with gravestones and headstones, and then eventually my dad got me a job within the funeral industry itself, funeral service operative, from about 17 years old, and I haven't wanted or haven't really done anything else.
So you've, like you say, you've gone into it at a very early age. How was it that you actually sort of like made it to having your own business? Did you just kind of like get to a point where you thought yourself, God, this is something I really want to do for a living? You want to be sort of like self-employed and you want to start up your own business. How long have you actually been running your business?
I've been self-employed as a sole trader maybe 21 years. I decided, I'd say it was around about 2002 that I wanted to do this myself. I was always intrigued by the mystery of everything and wanting to know everything within the business, and that led to me always questioning, asking my employers and my colleagues on advice, on giving me bits of information that I didn't know, and I just always wanted to push myself. Now, as a young man, it was quite difficult within the business when I used to work for other companies in Sunderland, because you know, it's typically an elderly man's job, and to be landing on people's doorsteps at a 10 to 20, 21-year-old, sometimes people's eyebrows were raised. But I never let it get me down, and I continued to push myself, and I became from a funeral service operative, which would mean washing cars, conveyance, paperwork, mortuary work. I then moved on to becoming a funeral director's assistant, and then from there I became a full funeral director. I think by the time I was 21, 22, I was conducting funerals on my own for one of the largest independent companies in Sunderland, which sometimes meant dealing with, 10 funerals a week, which is a lot, especially for a young man. I think somewhere between 21 and 22, I decided this is for me. I want to do this for a living, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you say that you went in sort of like around about 17 years old. I don't think there's probably as many people who would look at moving into the funeral industry at that age. What sort of reaction did you get from like your friends around that time? Because I'm sure at age 17, people are looking at getting into their careers, and wanting to be stuff like footballers or doctors or things like that. And then you just like kind of turn around and say that you want to be involved in the funeral industry. What sort of reaction did you get from them? And what sort of reaction do you get from people in general now who you first meet, who find out that you are a funeral director?
I think as a young man, my friends would always make fun of me, always be the butt of the jokes, the typical jokes that people would say, you'll never be out of business kind of joke, and nowadays I suppose they still say the same thing, so it's the same jokes, just a different day. You become hardened to listening to them over and over. I think more than anything, people are intrigued by the mystery and the taboo of the whole subject. So whereas some people might poke fun, usually when they have poked fun and they get you on your own, they kind of ask a few questions, and they're always like asking me what would I do, what I would say, and it's not something that we would ever discuss closed shop, but people do ask after they've usually made their humorous little jokes at us. They have their little jokes, and then they like to find out a little bit more when they get the opportunity.
Yeah, and I dare say you've heard the phrase, "It's never going to be a dying trade," quite a lot of times. If you had £1 for every time you heard that, I think you'd probably already be retired. So can you take us through the process of getting the phone call about somebody who has passed away, what's the procedure that you go through to getting that call to getting the funeral itself?
Well, I mean, every call and every funeral is different, but on a standard protocol, if you like, for want of better terms, I mean, really, we would take a call from a bereft family, and we would register their details and their information, as well as their loved ones who they've sadly lost, and then we would look at organising a time that was suitable to give them advice on registration, advice on organisation of the funeral. What mode of funeral is crucial, you know. Would it be burial or would it be cremation? Is money a factor? Do the family need support from the DWP? Has this been something that's been expected? Has it been tragic and sudden? You know, is there a plan in place? There are a whole host of questions that we would go through, but to simplify it, really, we would be looking after the client's wishes, which would be instructed on behalf of them by their family. We would then carry those wishes out, which would be, i.e., a cremation or a service into church, or the family might want to organise a viewing. And I mean, a funeral can be as elaborate as you would like nowadays, from horse-drawn carriages to umpteen limousines, from all the way down the line to, you know, a family who just want a direct cremation where nobody wants to attend the service. So there's a multitude of answers I could give you, to be honest, in regards to what we would do. But we would basically, all those wishes, we would take the instruction from the client and we would organise everything that needs to be organised, therefore lifting a huge burden from the family, because we're having a good understanding of the formalities and the certification process and the paperwork that's involved and the red tape that comes with that. After the funeral, we would look at trying to support the family as much as possible after as well, with, you know, some families might want to have a memorial service, a gravestone. Some families just need somebody to talk to. Some people don't have anybody, and sometimes they pick up the phone. We have clients who still call or text, sometimes on a monthly basis, just to ask how we're doing, and we chat to them, you know. So there's a big, broad spectrum of what we do, and I think ultimately there's something extra can come with every funeral, something that we haven't done in the past, an option that we haven't given a family and a family have requested from us. So there's a lot entailed within the business, but it's down to looking after our clients in a sympathetic and caring manner and guiding them through the process so as to ease the burden.
So it's not just a case of, you know, I think a lot of people probably see it as you turn up on funeral day, you got people there, they have the funeral service, and then, you know, that's it. It's the aftercare service that you offer as well is very, very important, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, we have clients who come to us, and, you know, a lot of people would assume that as a funeral director, what they say on a daily basis is some guy walking in front of the hearse, all pomp and ceremony with a top hat on, and they think, oh, that job, I could do that job. But behind all that day for me is the easiest part of my job. I find the dealing with the bereft families, the surviving relatives, the people who are upset, the people who can't communicate with you properly because they've never been through this process before. That's the hardest part of the job, you know. That's the difficult part, and as you mentioned, the aftercare service and being able to still pick up the telephone, send a Christmas card, that all comes not just as part of the service, but as a natural instinct and a core value of the company, that we have to be caring and professional for all of our clients.
Yeah, thanks for that, Graham.
With more music variety, local news, guests and features, you're listening to Weir Valley's best station, Weir Radio.
So we're back with Graham again now. Graham, just some more questions for you here. Now, one of the main things that I hear about when it comes to funerals is, unfortunately we have to look at it, is the price of funerals. Now, I think I read something or heard something somewhere that apparently round about the average of a funeral is around £4,000. Obviously, is a lot of money to somebody that maybe doesn't have a great deal of money, or sometimes in some cases no money whatsoever. There's obviously funeral plans that they can have. Is that something that you would definitely recommend, getting a funeral plan?
Prepaid funeral plans are an option for families. However, a lot of the prepaid funeral plans price nationally, and unfortunately they all cost money just as a normal funeral would do. I mean, if a client doesn't have any money to pay for their funeral, then often they might not be able to manage a funeral plan. Some of the funeral plans offer direct debit, where you can take it over terms over a number of years to prepay for the plan. But as I've said, these plans are often priced nationally and cost in excess of £800 to £1,000 more than your average funeral director might actually charge, because the money isn't paid directly to us, it always goes into trust funds. So these plans, for all they are beneficial to the clients, mainly to the clients who have the money to pay for them, we do offer a number of styles of funerals, where we can adapt, cut costs dramatically. And it's very much trending at the moment. You may have seen these advertisements on television that offer these direct cremation packages. That's something that we offer as well as funeral directors. Yeah. This isn't just dedicated to the companies that advertise these. We are also able to offer similar plans, whereas we can do funerals from as little as £1,000 in some cases, But it's all down to the family's wishes and their loved ones' wishes on what they wanted. I mean, we've got instances now where local authorities are charging ridiculous amounts of money for grave spaces. We've got crematoriums run by large conglomerate companies which are offering cremations at quite expensive cost. They also charge extras for out of the area clients. So, for all the funeral service always looks like it's expensive and the money comes to the funeral director, once you break down some of the costs, the funeral director might only profit £800, £700, £500 and sometimes £1,000 out of all those costs that are paid out. The disbursements that we pay out ultimately are the bulk charges on the funerals. Because I know a lot of people would point the finger and say, oh well, we don't want to spend all that money, but unfortunately if you're going to have a normal funeral, even if you took our costs away, you'd still be looking at over £2,500, £2,300 for some of these average funerals that people want. So it just depends on what the client wants, where they want it and how they want it,
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the adverts as well about like this direct to either the grave or to the crematorium, and I just think to myself, are the people out there that really don't have anybody at funerals? Is that something that you come across very much, where you don't actually have anybody at a funeral?
It's not something we come across regularly, but it is something that does happen. And when those instances occur for us as funeral directors, I often encourage my staff, my drivers and my underbearers to come into the funeral and just sit quietly to see that person off. But these companies on television, they own the crematorias that they're advertising, and what they don't say is that they don't tell you that you're not getting cremated in your own town. You're getting taken down, you're getting transported from your hometown to somewhere, maybe London or down south or in the Midlands, for this funeral to take place, where nobody can attend, and your ashes are going to be sent through the post. Now that to me is uncaring and undignified. If that's what somebody wants, then that's fine. But we're undertakers, and like I said, our core values are our families and looking after our families, to be caring and dignified and to help keep costs low.
Yeah, that's it. Because obviously cost is obviously a massive factor in it, and if you can do that to help out a family, then all fair play to you. It just shows that you're not just sort of like in it for the money, and that you just want to try and make as much as you can. Like you say, you do have to tailor things for what the family wants, whether it's something big and lavish or something cheap and cheerful, I suppose you can say. Now, you've got 3 daughters and a son. Are any of them looking to get into the funeral business at all?
I'm not quite sure at the moment. Children are all of age. One of my daughters is going back to college. One of my son is aspiring to be a footballer. My youngest daughter is still at school. I don't think it's a business that they really would take a lot of interest in just now, but my eldest daughter has helped me on occasion, and she has discussed with me on occasion the possibility of being able to help and support within the family industry. And it may well be over time, that becomes something they become more and more interested in. A little bit on the side of that is, we live in the old Randolph Institute in Evenwood in Bishop Auckland, and that was the old Miners Institute, and became a doctor's. We then made it a residential dwelling, and the other part of the business is rateable, so we actually work and live on the premises. So it's kind of become a natural part of the children's lives to be able to see things coming and going from the funeral home and seeing their dad operate from here, you know. So I think over time, maybe when some of the older ones are a little bit older, it may be an option. And I think as I lay the foundations, I'm 40-year-old now, and as I lay the foundations for the business, I think as the business grows, that maybe in 10, 20, 30 years' time, when I'm not here, then my children may have a much larger clientele than I do, and it may be a business that is completely viable for them to be able to survive and make a living from.
Yeah, and you've also just become a granddad as well. Congratulations there, Graham. It's a grandson that you've got, I believe, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, who knows, maybe it's 18, 20 years' time. Even if your own kids don't want to be in the into the industry, it could possibly your grandson, maybe in the future, could have something to do with the business. Stranger things have happened.
Well, yeah, that would be lovely to think, but I'd really like him to be wearing a Sunderland shirt, James, and playing football, you know. But yeah, you know, you never know what happens in this life. It's a funny old world, so yeah, it could be a possibility, James.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for just a moment. I'm still here with Graham Worthy, and we're back in a moment and to finish off this interview with him, looking into the funeral business and the life of an undertaker. We'll be back in just a moment.
Online, on your smart speaker, and the smartphone app. This is Weir Radio.
Okay, thank you for joining me here again on Weir Radio with my guest today, Graham Worthy from GT Worthy Funeral Services. Now, just onto your personal life a little bit, Graham. You've got a girlfriend, Dawn. When you met her, how did you strike up that conversation, telling her what you do for a living, that you are a funeral director?
Well, fortunately for me, it wasn't a subject that she had to really broach, because she was aware and she'd been at a funeral that I was conducting, so she knew what my job was. And when we first got together, she never really asked me anything about the job. But in time, then, you know, she asked me little bits and pieces, you know, and she's like, well, I don't know how you can do what you do, and I could never do it, you know, and it would frighten me, you know. I think she sees it as a bit of an honour of a job to be doing, to be supporting our families. She said she could never do it because she would be constantly crying, and she says that it must take a special person to be able to take care of families in that respect and be able to carry them through the process without becoming too upset yourself. So yeah, it's an unusual one, I'm sure, but she doesn't push me and ask me much about it nowadays. But she did ask little bits and pieces in the beginning, but it's been left there now, and she just treats me like just anybody else, you know, a nurse, factory work, delivery driver, whatever, you know. So it's not something, you know, that we bring up nowadays.
Yeah, I dare say you've probably had some days where you could come back home and you'd see Dawn. She'd ask you what sort of day that you've had, and you could be thinking, well, have I had a day today? There's obviously things that you're going to share with her, and some things that you wouldn't share with her. Like you say, you mentioned it about being a job not for everybody. People will turn around and say, like, you know, how do you do something like that? But one thing I really, really respect from the job that you do is that you're there for people and for families who are potentially having the worst day of their lives when they've lost maybe as a child or a father or a mother. So the responsibility that's on your shoulders is absolutely huge. So, you know, I say fair play to you for that, because it is, to me, you know, being involved in a huge part of somebody's life is just, it's an unbelievable, like almost like an honour for you to be there for that family.
Well, that's right, it is, and the families that we've helped out in the past when they've lost a loved one, you know, they thank us daily for the services that we provide for them, and we often, you know, like I said before, we end up not just becoming on a professional level, but we become friends, you know, and some of the cards and letters that we've received over the years are lovely to read, because sometimes dealing with people when their world must be numb. You know, they haven't got a lot to say. It feels like a formality, but often after time, and they're able to pick up the phone, you're talking to a different person, and then they're very thankful for everything that you've done, and as I've said, they ultimately become like family themselves to you. And you know, a very good friend of mine, Sean Anderson, who's no longer with us now, he trained me as a young undertaker, and I'd say he probably taught me everything I know. But one of the core values Sean did teach me was, he always said that whoever is lying in that coffin, you treat them like they're your mum, your dad, or your own family, you know. And I've always tried to hold on to that value. And I think by being enabling ourselves to feel and act like that, our families pick up on it. And as I say, it's the feedback that we get from them. They tell us that we're very family orientated, we're very personal business, you know. And as I said, living in a small community as we do, and running the business from the same premises, a lot of our clients like that, because again, it feels like their loved ones at home, whereas a lot of funeral homes are just like locked up for the night and the person's left in the chapel of rest, where there's always somebody here, you know. So yeah, we encourage our families to stay as long as they can. We have appointments like everywhere else, but we always say to them, you know, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want to sit in there for half an hour? Do you want to come in here? You know, do you want to talk? So, you know, it's a strong family value that we have for the families that we look after, and I think they all appreciate that.
So anyway, Graham, on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much for speaking to us at We Radio today, and thanks for giving us a look into the world of being a funeral director. Now, you can catch Graham on Facebook. His Facebook page is GT Worthy Funeral Service, or he also has a website address, and it's grahamworthyfuneraldirectors.com. Any sort of like inquiries that you might have for Graham, any questions at all, please get in contact with him. He's always around to help you at all. But Graham, yes, thank you very much. That's brilliant, not a problem at all. And thank you for your time, and have a good rest of the day.